Assalamu alaikum. My name is Akbar Pathan. I'm here with the Wine Professional Development Team, and this is our first event of the year called Breaking into Tech. And so the agenda for today is we're going to have a quick introduction, followed by software engineering with Hamza Yaqub, product management by Rahim Ashrafi, cloud by Umar Khattak, and data science and machine learning by Hasib Muhammad. After that, we'll have some Q&A. If you have any questions, you can leave some in the chat. We have some ready prepared, but any questions you may have, inshallah, may get answered now or later. So first, let me introduce you to who we are. The YM Professional Development Team is a team of YM National, and we are focused on a couple of things, including career planning, college planning, and that could include resume advice. That could go all the way to, making a big career change like this one, inshallah, and stuff of that nature. So I'm going to introduce you to the panelists. We have Hamza Yaqub. He's a software engineer at Amazon. Rahim Ashrafi. He's a product manager at DTN. Umar Khattak. He's a solution architect at Microsoft. And Hasib Muhammad. He is a principal machine learning engineer at Amgen. So without further ado, before I start, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Hamza Yaqub for software engineering.
Assalamu alaikum, guys. Hope you guys are doing well. Alhamdulillah. So let's jump right into it, inshallah. We can go to the next slide. Cool. So a little bit about me. For those of you guys don't know, my name's Hamza, from YM, Florida. For those of you guys who've ever came down or know about Florida, I live in Fort Lauderdale, about an hour north of Miami. So if you're part of the YM network and you're ever in Miami or that area, inshallah, hit me up, and it'd be great to kind of host you guys and take you guys around. So I graduated from the University of Florida with a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science. Currently working at Amazon, and previously I've worked at a handful of other tech companies, from undergrad, research and whatnot. So yeah, and then just some quick facts I kind of highlighted for you guys is obviously everyone knows, or everyone's been following with the TikTok hype, and they've been kind of seeing that software salaries are kind of crazy and off the charts. And I'm kind of here to tell you guys that yeah, it's true. The top paying or the top tier tech companies are easily giving out, over $200,000 worth of offers in total compensation for software engineers. So for those of you guys who are considering pivoting into tech, or, currently you're studying computer science and you kind of need a little bit of a motivation or a push, this could be it, right? Obviously, don't make money your only goal. As Muslims, we know we should excel at whatever we do, whatever career we jump into, but money is always an added incentive and a bonus. So it's one of those fields where the better you are, there's always a demand for high talent, software engineers. And another interesting fact is that there's about 4.3 million software engineers as of 2022 in America. And kind of contrast on the other end with doctors, there's about 1 million active doctors in America. And I guess what I'm really trying to show in the grand scheme is that, yeah, tech is growing at a really, really, really rapid pace. But at the same time, the population in America is 320 or 30 million people, right? Out of that, only 4.3 million are software engineers, right? So that's about, a percent of the people are software engineers in America. And it's something that, as much as we are in this bubble that tech is growing and it's booming, there's plenty of opportunities, there's tons of jobs, and there's so much growth in this field that has yet to be experienced. So for people who are, again, driven and they're talented, there's always going to be demand for them. So yeah, that's a small overview, a little bit about me, and then kind of an intro into software engineering. So on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about how you guys can kind of break into tech now. So generally, and in terms of education, my personally recommended route that I recommend everyone to kind of go through is enroll in your local university or go through some online program, but take some focused curriculum that graduates you with some type of degree in computer science or related field, right? Could even be something like math or data science or software engineering, whatever it is. Pick something related to that field and grab a major or a minor in it. If you grab a major, that's the most common, well-known route. It'll definitely be enough to propel you and give you enough opportunities. But even for those of you guys, a lot of people, they get interested in software engineering much later, or they're juniors and they're like, what could we do, right? We only have 2 more years left of college. Still at that point, I really recommend people to get minors and go to career fairs and interview and sell yourself, because it's very possible that maybe your major was in mechanical engineering, but you have a software engineering job by the time you're graduating. It's a field that gives opportunities to a lot of people. The only thing is, as long as you're qualified and you can pass the bar for interviews. Now, for those people where it's absolutely not possible, going back to college isn't a thought or anything, then I would say is you can look into coding boot camps. This kind of gives you another opportunity on a smaller scale to get a more focused, broader, touch on just software engineering. So, you may be working more full stack or whatnot, but it's enough where, you can match into a certain company after you're done with the boot camp. Boot camp, again, at the end of the day, it's very short. You have to be very driven, and it doesn't cover a lot of the fundamentals. So expect to be, learning a lot on the side if you really want to excel and get into, your dream company. And relevant experience always helps. So it's necessarily, you don't go through college or boot camp, but you may find yourself just in a role by coincidence that you're able to, include software engineering skills into, right? Whether it's an IT job or automation job or something you can spin into software engineering, relevant experience will always give you a boost up. So I just want to kind of briefly go through some of the skills that software engineers need. You need a good technical understanding. So I think college does a great job of this. It's teaching you fundamentals. There's a lot in terms of understanding the ins and outs of compilers and understanding how different cloud technologies work and interact with each other, and understanding problems, common problems regarding threading or multi-threaded applications that is going to be taught to you mainly through school. But there are other means and resources that you can learn this from. But having a strong CS fundamentals goes a really, really, really long way. And so the other thing I'd say is, if you're interested in software engineering, you have to be able to kind of write code, or at least have an interest or passion for it, right? You don't have to be great at it, and that's completely okay, but at least an ability to understand on a high level how to write code and what different data structures are, how some basic algorithms work, some common design patterns and things like that goes a long way. And lastly, system design, not super necessary for people just breaking in, but just understanding that there's technologies out there that make lives extremely easy for applications like this to run, right? Even for us to have a webinar here today, there's so many different services. How do these services interact? How are they, how is the piece of code I'm writing contributing to this bigger picture of delivering an actual service or application for end users, right? And this is where you learn more about scalability, you learn how to design, you learn about databases and different frameworks and, caching techniques and things that, if we didn't have today, you might be, waiting a minute or 2 minutes long on your phone, waiting for your social media app to get the latest tweets or the newest pictures. So understanding that there is a bigger concept, and system design is really fun. It's kind of like Legos coming together, and there's always trade-offs. Lastly, soft skills, big thing. People really think tech is just sitting behind a computer and writing code. But that's the furthest thing from the truth. If all you are is you can write good code, but you can't communicate or write well, then you're not going to see yourself getting promoted or getting to the next step and ladder and phase of your career. So communication and writing is a really, really big point, because you have to collaborate with other engineers, product managers, internal support engineers, customers. It's a big part of the day-to-day life. So yeah, alongside of that, the growth plan, generally, most people, if you're an individual contributor, you generally go from software engineer level 1, spend a couple years there. These are all variable, again, on companies. Most companies have the terminal level that most software engineers can kind of stagnate at, and you just chill at that level. And if you want to just be at that level for 10, 15 years, it's kind of good if you have no incentive, or if you want to get promoted, you can, but it requires, pushing the needle forward and putting in a little bit of extra work. But generally, software engineer level 1, level 2, each one of these takes about, 2 years. And then, generally by your 5th, 6th year, you try to break into a senior software engineer. And generally in most companies, senior software engineer is a pretty, terminal level. So at Amazon, like an L5, or Google also, I think an L5. And then you can, if you're more passionate, you can do staff and then principal. Principal being one of, the prestigious top, extremely hard ones. If you want to be management route, similar path, software engineer level 1, level 2, and then you can try to transition into being a tech lead. You're going to be responsible for a lot, managing projects, being responsible for moving pieces and what other engineers are working on. So it's basically being a manager without the title of a manager. And then, once you prove yourself on that scale, you can work yourself into a manager. And then after that, director or whatnot. And I'm kind of just going to close off with a couple pieces of advice here. One being that software engineering is a field where just attending your classes and just doing the bare basics, even if you're in a boot camp, it isn't enough. You need to be able to dedicate time outside of your school's curriculum to be able to excel and do extremely well. In software engineering, you will see that to get a job, you need to be proficient with data structures and algorithms. You need to have good general knowledge of object-oriented programming, things like Java and Python. So just know that a lot of people who dedicate their time into going to this path, and if they're successful, it's because they're spending a lot of time after class to learn about different concepts. Next thing I'll say is every day is a new learning challenge. You learn a lot, and you're never going to wake up one morning and be like, I understand everything that computer science has to offer or software engineering has to offer. Every day, there's a new technology. There's a new framework. There's a new programming language. There's a new tool that you can leverage that makes your life and your life as a software engineer much easier, right? This concept of a cloud, came out almost 15 years ago, an extremely new and innovative idea 15, 20 years ago. But it's kind of taken over the world now. And anyone who kind of wants to even break into tech has to have a basic understanding of the cloud. Just, maybe a couple of months ago, you guys saw ChatGPT, right? It kind of took over the world and took it by surprise, but it just shows you that there's a new learning process every day. Understanding how these models work and technology is growing is extremely important. Lastly, I'll say is imposter syndrome is extremely real. It's normal to have imposter syndrome and feel like you're not good enough in technology. Even for me, 4 years in undergraduate, almost 3 years of professional experience, every single day, I always find myself in a situation where, am I good enough? Can I be doing this? Can I do this my entire life? And I just want you guys to know that it's extremely normal, and take it one day at a time. You're only going to grow when you're put in a spot to be challenged. And when you're pushed out of this comfort zone, that's where you're going to see the most growth come out from yourself. So stay persistent, persevere through it, and inshallah, you'll come out the other end stronger. Lastly, some resources. I'll touch upon this more at the end, but there's a great site called educative.io. They have great courses that cover, learn the basics of Java, learn the basics of programming. If you're more advanced, they have courses on interview prep or learning different technologies. So definitely recommend utilizing those. And then there's a site called LeetCode for those of you guys who are already in this industry or, doing interview prep. Great site with tons of questions on coding problems. So yeah, overall, that's kind of my overview on software engineering. Inshallah, hope you guys were able to benefit, and we'll touch upon some more concepts in the Q&A.
Jazakallah khair, Hamza. Now I'm going to pass it on to Rahim Ashrafi for product management.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name's Rahim. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. I've been going to YM for over 15 years now, specifically in YM Westside. I have a bachelor's degree in mathematics, and I've been a product manager since graduating. I first joined Authentic Learning Labs, which is analytics e-learning startup. Then I went to Productive Edge, which was a health tech consulting company, and now I'm at DTN as a product manager. DTN is basically a leader in the weather, agriculture, and energy industry, and I specifically work within the weather organization on the innovation side. So I'm working on a brand new weather product that we're currently building, and it's very interesting stuff. Some quick facts about product management is that the average salary of a product manager in the US is $111K. One thing to note about this is that you'll see this trend amongst all the roles today that we will be talking about in tech. Some companies will pay 80K for that same role. Some companies will pay 120K. Some companies will pay 300 or 400K for just being a product manager or just being a software engineer. So it's very company dependent on how much you'll be making in this in technology. Another quick fact is 21% of products fail to meet customer needs. And this is very important because it shows the importance of a PM. A product manager is very important on a team. You have cloud guys, you have software engineers, data scientists, who are all very smart, very talented, working on building the product and really building out the features and the product itself or the platform itself. But you need someone on the other side to not only work with tech teams, but to work with sales, to work with marketing, to work with customers. And that's where a product manager truly comes in. And also another quick fact is only 5% of product managers know how to code. I put this one in here because that's the difference in product management versus all the other roles that you'll see today. That product manager, even though it falls within the tech realm, it's not a role where you need to know how to code, or it's not a role where you will be actively coding. I will get into the benefits of knowing code because there are still benefits, but that's just something to keep in a job that you're working with tech teams as a product manager, but you're not exactly the most technical person on the team as well. Could you go next slide, please? So now I'll get into the education and how to become a product manager. So the same thing again with many of the other careers in tech. You can either get a degree in computer science or in some tech field, but it's important to note that you do not need a tech degree or computer science degree to become a product manager. Sometimes you'll see people coming from engineering backgrounds, or you'll see people coming from even like liberal arts backgrounds, education backgrounds. Product manager can even be a role where you don't even have a college degree, because for a role like online course, experience is the #1 factor. Now, an MBA can be helpful, and it's highly debated for product managers if they should get their MBA. It definitely can help you, but I will give the caveat that with an MBA, it's not worth putting yourself in a big hole of debt if you don't have the resources to get the MBA and you don't have that opportunity to get your MBA. If your company is willing to pay for it, or if you have the funds where you can easily get that MBA, you have the time, you have that opportunity, and it's being handed to you, then go ahead, go for it. Just try to get into a top MBA school, and it'll really put you ahead. It may put you ahead in the workforce, but it's definitely not something that's required. Now, certifications, online courses, and those things, they're all optional. There's not a single certification that I can tell you that, hey, you really need the certification to become a PM. It's not true. Most of the times when you'll look at job descriptions, you won't find any requirements on certifications as well for product management. And that's because product managers, the courses and the certifications, all that they really do is help you teach you what a PM does and how a PM thinks. And those are things that you can get through experience, but you can also get through courses and certifications, because sometimes you may get one experience as a product manager in your current company, whereas if you join a different company, it would be a whole different experience. So that's one place where certifications and online courses may help, but again, it's not required. Now, what are the skills that you need to become a successful product manager? I'll just to name a few over here: research skills, strategic thinking, organization, communication, leadership, analytics, writing, design skills. Now, one thing you'll see that was way different than the last speaker was that the skills are very broad here. And that's because there's not a single skill and a cookie cutter way for a product manager. Every company treats a product manager differently. Every team, the product manager will be a little bit different. And really, to become a successful product manager, you can't just master one or two skills and leave the rest. You have to be a very well-rounded individual across all of these skills. And the better that you can gain experience using these skills, the better product manager that you will be. So really, again, as I highlighted in the last point, was that experience trumps everything. Now, what is the growth plan and the timeline for a product manager? And there's two ways. So if you're coming out of college, there are APM roles, so associate product manager roles. And that's a great opportunity to get into a big name company, because there are companies such as Google, Meta, Uber, and many other companies that have APM programs, and they really are just hiring people with no experience. Like, this is the best way to get your door into a fantastic company. Maybe a lot of these high prestigious companies are paying 150K plus right out of college. And that's a great way to get your foot in the door. But I will say that you will have thousands of applications for that same role. Maybe even for a company like Meta or Google, you may have 20,000 people applying for the role that you're applying for. So they're very competitive, but it's worth going for and it's worth taking a shot at. Now, another way to get into product management is a product adjacent role. Now, that can look like anything that is working with a product manager. So that can be a software engineer, it can be a cloud person, it can be a data scientist, it can be a business analyst, it can be a product analyst, a QA, it can even be a customer support individual, or it can be a sales individual or marketing individual. Just anything that you work adjacent to a product manager can help you get your foot in the door. And the best advice that I would give is that if you are in a role where it's not a product manager role, but you have a product manager on your team, I would go to my manager and tell my manager, hey, my goal is to become a product manager in the long run. Do you think that I can take some more role responsibilities and part of that role on? So I can just get some more experience. And that's a fantastic way to initiate eventually internal transfer, where maybe you end up getting promoted and internally transferred into the product manager role. From there, once you're a product manager, you can become a senior product manager. Then there's two paths from there, which is a high-level individual contributor. So just a product manager who's maybe working on a lot more larger products or a lot more complex products. So think about the product manager who owns like the YouTube homepage. Like that is a huge product. It's impacting maybe even like at least 1 billion users. So the product manager there is going to be a very high level product manager. Or you can move into people management, and people management is also a great place to be, where now instead of doing your own individual product management role work, you are managing other product managers. So maybe you have 3 or 4 product managers under you, you manage them and you advise them and help them along the way. So some other advice that I would have is that product is a great place to be if you want to be in tech, but don't exactly want to code. And I'll say this because I really liked tech. I really wanted to be in tech, but taking, those Python courses or taking a Java online course, I really did not want to sit there and code all day. So I knew I wanted to be in tech, but I wanted to find a role that isn't very technical, that is just working with tech teams, and that's where product was the answer for me. Now, I will say, leading to the next point, that domain knowledge and technical expertise can give you an edge over other product managers. Now, let's think if the product that the company is hiring for is a cloud product, then they would want the product manager to have some cloud experience. And the best way to have cloud experience is maybe even to be a cloud developer. So if you have that background and you have that domain knowledge, it can help you find your niche and get into very specific PM roles that the generalist PM won't be able to get into. And also, this next point is very important. It's important to practice for your PM interviews by thinking outside of the box, articulating very well, thinking through solutions on the spot, and being ready to follow up with any curveballs. That is huge because, like I said before, that the best way to prepare yourself to be a product manager is to actually gain experience. And if you don't have much experience already, then the best way would be to listen to product management interviews. There's tons of resources online. There's tons of free YouTube videos of mock interviews for product management interviews. And those may look like product strategy interviews, product design interviews, and interviews where they're really just trying to think, okay, can you take a problem and how well can you take that problem, communicate that problem, and think through that problem on the spot. And the more you can do that and the more you can be prepared in that interview style, the better product manager you will realistically be. Because in the workforce, many times you'll be in a meeting, talking to leadership or talking to customers, and leadership or customers will throw you a curveball, and you have to be prepared to answer those curveballs. And that's where the interview experience really helps within your day-to-day work. Now, you may realize that product management can be a lot more difficult to get your foot in the door without experience. It may be difficult, but it's not possible. It is possible. It's not impossible. And that's very important, that maybe you can't get a product management job right now, but maybe you can get a product manager job after a few years working alongside a product manager. It's definitely something that's a lot more long-term. It's the old school way of thinking for product management was that it was not a person's job coming right out of college. It was usually someone who was very senior. It was someone who's been working at the company for 5, 10, 15 years, and then finally gets promoted into product management. Today's product manager in the current time looks very different than 20 years ago. And that's where you will find product managers right out of college. But it still can take time for a lot of companies that haven't really gotten up to speed with that idea that you don't need to be someone with 20 years of experience to become a product manager. Now, I do want to leave you with some resources, and these slides will be available afterwards. But I do have a recommended book list, which I'll link here, and it'll be in the slides afterwards. And I do want to say that if you do have questions about online courses or interview prep material, feel free to come to me, connect with me on LinkedIn and ask me for recommendations. I don't want to recommend a single one here because there's tons and they're all great, but I can tell you my personal experience one-on-one after this. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair for that. And I'm going to be passing it on to Umar Khattak to tell us a little bit more about cloud.
Jazakumullah khairan Akbar. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Like Akbar mentioned, my name is Omar. My current position is a solution architect at Microsoft. I am initially from East Brunswick, New Jersey. Well, the town right south of it, but no one knows the name, so I put East Brunswick. I come from YM Piscataway, which is in the NJ South subregion. I've been going there since give or take around 2017. So been about 5-6 years now, alhamdulillah. So I recently graduated in May. I graduated from Rutgers University in New Brunswick, and I majored in computer science and engineering and minored in math. Forgot to put that there as well. And like I mentioned, my current role is a solution architect at Microsoft as of September. So I've been there for about, that's too much math, about give or take 5 months, let's put a guess. And some of my previous internships included last summer, I was a solution architect intern at Amazon Web Services. At the same time, I was a software engineering extern at IBM, as well as the year before, I was a software engineering co-op at Johnson & Johnson. So a couple of quick facts about cloud is it is often the most overlooked vertical in tech. The reason I say that is because cloud is a very, very, very broad field, right? Which kind of goes into the next point, right? There's multiple verticals that you can get into, multiple different specialties and specs and industries that you can really focus on, that some do require, very intensive technical experience, but some don't require the most technical expertise. And so some of the examples that I put in here are, for example, my position, solution architect, which is probably the most basic. When you think of tech cloud, you think of those type of things, you probably end up finding a solution architect position. It also goes into DevOps. So I actually work on the Azure DevOps team for Microsoft. But you will probably see, DevOps engineers, DevOps architects. You can get into infrastructure, you can get into cloud security, you can even get into technical consulting with expertise in cloud. You can get into big data, data engineering, data analytics. You can even get into sales, right? We do have sales engineers that, push the initiative of, cloud onto, their customers. And it honestly, the list goes on. So if you want to go on to the next slide, inshallah. Yeah, so a couple of things. So education to become a cloud engineer. Like I mentioned a little bit ago, you don't really need to be the most technically inclined for some of these things, but what is normally done and what is recommended is to have a bachelor's degree in any tech-related field. So that could be computer science, that could be MIS, that could be BATE, that could be IT. The list goes on. But like I said, it doesn't have to be the most technically inclined major as well. For example, in my internship last year at Amazon, my manager was a finance and film major, right? And, he spent a couple of years, getting certifications, practicing, understanding the cloud a little bit more, applied to the position, ended up getting it, and he was able to move his way up management. So, I mean, that's just one example of, it's not always looked at as, you're not expected to have a tech degree to get into cloud, but it is recommended. And obviously for management, any master's degree would be preferred. So master's, MBA is the most common, but I do know some of my own managers who have Masters of Science in, any sort of tech field, or they have a master's in engineering of that sorts. And certifications are always a very big help in cloud. Two of the most basic ones that I'm sure a lot of you have heard of are the AWS Cloud Practitioner certification, which kind of just goes into the basic fundamentals of what cloud is, what type of AWS services they have. It can go from computing, storage, networking, disaster response, AI, machine learning, all of these different things, and just gives you a bare bone structure. The Azure AZ 900 is the other one, which is essentially the Microsoft equivalent to AWS. That is one I'm actually working on right now. It's kind of funny. I have the AWS one, but I don't have the Azure one, and I work for the company. But the Azure Fundamentals one also is the same thing, but it focuses on the Azure side of things. So those two certifications are the most common ones, and also the easiest ones. If you really, set aside time, you can honestly get this done in a weekend. I know that the exams are give or take about $100, and you're allowed to take an exam every 2 weeks, I believe. So these are honestly things, especially if you're interested in cloud, these will look amazing on your resume. They are not required, but they are always, like I said, a big help. So some of the skills that a cloud engineer needs is understanding how cloud infrastructure works, right? You don't need to be the most technically inclined person when it comes to cloud. You don't need to know every single service. You don't need to know what all of those services do. You need to have a fundamental understanding of what those cloud services are, how to put them together, how to create different solutions with them, right? And so one of the pictures I put on top, it's very, very small, but you can see the sheer quality of how many services there are. And this is just AWS, right? So each one of these services has a different functionality, a different team that works on them and works on multiple different things. And so that's just one cloud provider, right? And, you can think of, Apple, you think of IBM, Microsoft, all of these things. So they all have services similar to this. The next one is identify the company's business objectives. So understanding where the business problems are and developing solutions to support them, right? And so you're always looking for something better, something to kind of expedite a process or, build a better infrastructure overall. And the last one is the most important one. This is what they will tell you in any interview you have, any onboarding experience that you've had regarding cloud, is the DDM acronym: design, deploy, manage. When you think of cloud, you think of it in 3 separate categories, right? You think of it before, which is designing. You think of it on the spot, which is deploying. And then you think of it afterwards, which is managing. And that's essentially how a lot of these cloud positions will end up getting divided into, right? So for example, I work on the managing side so that the cloud infrastructure is already there. Everything's already been pushed into production. And what my team does is we maintain and we manage it. So anything that happens, any severity cases, any breaks within the product or any of the features is what my team focuses on. But you will also have teams that focus on the actual designing it. So they will create design documents, architectural design, all of these different things. And then you'll actually have people that go into, either internally or externally with customers and actually deploy it and teach them how to use it. And so, like I said, a lot of these things do require, some technical experience and some really don't. The design part, you will mostly see a lot of people who aren't the most technically inclined. They're more or so on the sales side. They, try to sell it to the customer essentially, right? Deploying is when you get a little bit technical, right? You actually have to have a profound understanding of how to put these things together, how to troubleshoot, and how to kind of configure everything. Managing, you will also see people on the more non-tech side. In my position specifically, I do code a little bit. I'm within the testing and configuration product within Azure DevOps. So we do a couple of, a little bit of code here and there, a couple of, we work on like boards and repos. So GitHub, if you guys are familiar with that, different things like that. But, it's not always the most technically inclined. You will see positions that aren't, within the same thing. So we also have products within, let's say, like just essentially just product management, right? So we actually have a lot of PMs on our team that actually manage that side, that product, because that's not within our expertise. So moving on, the growth plan and timeline for a typical solution architect. Like I said, there are a lot of positions in cloud. But obviously the one that I can really attest to is the solution architect position. So you will start off with about a total comp of give or take around 125K. That is obviously, not going to be the same case for every company. But a lot of these top companies will offer something relatively around the same amount as that. Give or take around 1 or 2 years in the field, you can move up to a solution architect 2, which is around 189K. The growth projectile after that is give or take around 3 or 4 years. Then you'll move on to a senior solution architect, which rounds out to about 250. And then a couple of years after that, you end up getting promoted to a principal solution architect, which is the highest level position, at least within Microsoft, that you can reach as a solution architect. That total comp equals out to about 370K. If you are interested in moving into the management side of things, it's relatively the same thing until senior solution architect. What you can do from there is move into management. So you can actually become a director of solution architecture, which is essentially the Microsoft version of management. You're basically a solution architect manager. And then from there, you move into a senior director position. That comes from, honestly, that's outside of my reach, so I can't really say for sure. And then from there, you move on to either a lot of things horizontally is what they end up doing, or if you move vertically, you move into corporate VP positions or VPs of actual organizations from there. So any other advice that I could give, I said this again, so excuse me for being repetitive, but certifications do look amazing on resumes when it comes to cloud. The reason for this is a lot of these interviewers and a lot of these recruiters, when they look at your resume, they want to see you taking initiative outside of your typical academics or your typical extracurriculars, right? So when they see that you have a certification on your resume, they'll see that, okay, this person actually went out of their way, went out of their, college education, and put time aside to actually study, actually learn about this stuff, take the exam, pass the exam, and all of that, right? So it does look good on resumes because it does show you that need to take initiative, specifically within cloud. I completely forgot to mention, I do have a QR code in the corner. I know that they said we will be sending the slides afterwards, but the QR code on the corner basically leads to my LinkedIn. If you guys are interested, please connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message on LinkedIn, inshallah. But second part, being a people person. This is very, very, very important within cloud. And if you haven't already told, you can tell based on a lot of the points that I've mentioned, is that cloud is all about communicating and collaborating. You're essentially that bridge connecting the tech side of things and the business side of things, right? When you're designing, for example, when you're focusing on actually selling the product and selling cloud architecture to businesses, you want to be able to, speak to them. You want to be able to talk about this stuff, have a conversation with them, understand where their problems are, and provide solutions for them. And it's the same thing when you're deploying. It's the same thing when you're managing. I work with customers on a daily basis where essentially what they're doing is telling me their problems, me understanding it, and okay, I understand where you're coming from. Why don't we give this a couple of shots? We'll focus on things from our end, and we'll keep you updated and things like that. So you're having conversations constantly with different people. So you have to learn to be, that communicative aspect really, really is important, especially with cloud, because a lot of cloud is customer facing. And literally when you think of a customer, you think of, customer service. How do we achieve excellent customer service? And it's your ability to, talk to them. And so that's probably one of the more important things. And if I can't emphasize that more, that is very, 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 very important within cloud. And so I'll leave you guys with two specific links that, really did help me. Were 5 traits that make a successful solution architect. This is an Amazon link. If you go into AWS Docs and you literally just search that, it'll probably be there. This really did help me because I probably should have mentioned this in the very beginning, but I was really on the software engineering side of things in the very beginning. I'm a CS major, coding was, the number one thing for me. And it's what I did in the very beginning of college. It's what I did for my first and second internship and externship. And, after reading this, it kind of got me towards, it kind of clicked in my mind that, this is something I like doing. I like being a people person. I like having conversations. I like dealing with cloud architecture and all of this stuff and products. And I really do see myself doing this long term. And so that's why, like, something like that. And the next link, which is cloud computing careers, job roles, and key skills. This will essentially tell you a lot of the, hot roles that are open right now. Obviously with this, hiring freeze, it's a bit tough, but it will tell you a lot of the ones that, a lot of companies are hiring for, and what key skills you can either showcase on your resume or work on to achieve those specific roles. Other than that, that should be it from me. So Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakallah khair, Omar. Thank you. I appreciate it. And next we'll go to data science and machine learning by Hasim Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. MashaAllah, if you're sticking around, it's almost an hour, so I'll be respectful of your time. I have been in YM since 1999, since a very, very long time ago, originally from Brooklyn NeighborNet. And now we are out in Chicago, me, my wife, 2 boys, 10 and 7. Alhamdulillah, we've been here for about 10 years. I started my professional career here in Chicago. So my degree started with computer science, and I want to, one of the benefits of going last is I get to respond to a lot of what was said so far, specifically how Hamza mentioned that, starting in computer science, you go into a software engineering role, make sure you do your leak codes and you can get into a top firm. I want to show you the ugly side of like a non-FANG career. I attempted leak codes. I attempted all those interviews and I was just a terrible coder. But alhamdulillah, after completing my bachelor's, I was able to secure a job at a non-FANG company. And I started as a software engineer. I did healthcare and wellness for a little while. And then I moved into Azure consulting, which I get to respond to Omar's comments as well for that. And I have 10 plus years experience in software engineering. And during that entire time, I kind of saw on the horizon that, data science and machine learning, the buzz is there, right? Every article is out there. And I'm talking about 5 years ago, nothing like what it is right now with OpenAI and ChatGPT, how that's taking over everything. But I kind of saw that, okay, that's where I want to take my career. So I started my master's in computer science around 2018, while still working full-time, while with 2 little kids. And I just graduated this past December. I specializing in machine learning, a fantastic degree. I have a link in the next slide. I'll tell more about it. But right now, my current role, where I've been for the last 6 months or so, is at a biopharmaceutical company as a principal machine learning engineer. I lead a team of machine learning engineers on the data science and engineering team within digital health and innovation. And couldn't have gotten here without all the skills that everyone has just mentioned. There's software engineering skills, there's product management skills, there's end-to-end life cycle, there is cloud computing, there's everything. And I want to make one thing very clear that I have on here that we're talking about data science and machine learning engineering. Those are 2 very distinct roles. And there's another role that isn't being represented here is data engineering. So I'll do my best to kind of give all that. A couple of quick facts. You can have a average starting salary in about 100K or more. High cost of living states, you can start at like 125, a little bit higher. And that's for starting salary. I won't mention the ceiling. There is no ceiling. It's all about how much effort and hard work you do. Data prep for all of this, for all the work that we do now accounts for about 80% of our time. We're preparing the data, we're cultivating the data. And then we move on to all the fun, cool stuff that you hear about. Can we go to the next slide, please? So here, I'll start with this Venn diagram in the top right corner. Computer science, math and statistics, and then domain and business knowledge. All 3 combined give you data science, but you see the different aspects that can give you software development, software engineering, machine learning. To get started as a data scientist or as a machine learning engineer, you can start with the computer science degree, with the math degree, with statistics, something that gives you something in that Venn diagram anywhere. And then what you'll see most often is people continue their education immediately after their bachelor's, as if they can, and they get their master's and they pick a specialty. Are they going to be going into health? Are they going to be going to finance? Are they going to be going into education? Whatever it might be, you pick your master's and you do a specialty in it. For example, you can go into bioinformatics or computational biology. To get started in data science as a machine learning engineer, as a data scientist, you need to know some programming language. Bare minimum, know Python. If you go into any interview without knowing Python, it just wouldn't happen. That's the bare minimum to get started. There are other languages. There's R, there's plenty others, but like 80–90% of the time you'll hear about people coding in Python in these roles. That's to get started. Now, to be good, you want to learn SQL. You want to be able to query your data, understand your data, do some amount of analytics on your data, and you need to know SQL for that. Not just the language, but the underlying technologies for how different databases work. So there's SQL, there's NoSQL, there's all this data wrangling that happens, and you need to know how to access it. And so in order to be good, you need to know SQL. And then to really stand out from the entire pack, you want to learn cloud computing. You don't want to be the one person who is coding on their laptop in some Python environment with everything running locally, and then you just hand it off to like a software engineer or someone in cloud or someone in DevOps and say, can you put this online for me? If you want to be the best, you want to learn everything about cloud computing and being able to put your model online, to create an API, to put something from the very start of an idea all the way out there to some test harness that some product manager can use to see if we want to use this in our products. Now for growth plan and timeline, I'm going to share what I've seen, what's been in my experience. I mentioned I started as a software engineer, but what I've seen successful for other people focused on getting into this field specifically, they'll get their bachelor's, they'll start as an associate data scientist, as a junior data scientist, as a data analyst, something like that, spending their time there, getting professional experience while also doing their master's. Once you have a master's, it's much easier for you to move into a pure data scientist role. You're going to see a lot of people asking, how can I get straight into data scientists from my bachelor's? And I'll tell you, it's pretty hard. You're going to see in the job requirements, master's preferred. And that'll definitely help you get your foot in the door. Then from there, it's all about your years of experience, how much time and effort you put into your skills, and you move into a senior role, senior plus. As mentioned by the other brothers on here, you can move into management, same idea. Another route, if you're not doing data science, but you want to stay on just the engineering side of things, you can start as a software engineer, do some professional experience for a few years, and learn the entire end-to-end life cycle of putting something in production, what that means. And you transition your skills into what a machine learning engineer does, which is on the engineering side of things, on the cloud computing side of things, learning how to take some analytic code, some model code, and putting it into production. And then from there as well, you can get your master's at the same time. You can move into a senior role, senior plus role. So I went from junior software engineer 2, then to team lead, then to principal engineer, principal architect, and then now principal machine learning engineer. After that, again, just as the other brothers mentioned, from there you can move into director roles as people managers or beyond. But to point out some advice, once you have the basics down, once you have your Python, your SQL, your cloud, the next best way to stand out is consuming white papers, all these different research papers that are coming out, all these models that you're hearing about that are coming out right now, like being able to clone your voice or generate an image from just a prompt or using ChatGPT. All of these are done through research. And you'll see the blog articles, you'll see the posts online, but where they start from is, this was a paper posted by so-and-so research group. So if you have the capability to understand, to sit and read and consume white papers, you'll be flying ahead of the pack. You want to join some data science machine learning meetups and Slacks, learn what the community is doing. Everyone is a part of it now. Just because of the onset of OpenAI and ChatGPT, everyone is learning about everything that's been coming out. But you can join some specific groups, and we can sync up later. I can refer you to some. And the idea is you're never going to stop learning. There's never a week that goes by where I'm going to be reading a paper or something, trying out a new API or seeing what the new latest technology is or what the latest white paper is. I'll leave you with some resources. It's a 6-hour seminar. about the chief decision scientist at Google. It's on Intro to Machine Learning. Very approachable for anyone at any level. Highly recommend you sit down and you just watch the whole thing. The master's that I did was the OMSCS program from Georgia Tech. They just reduced the cost even more. It's about $650 per class, and it's 10 classes, so you can do the whole degree in $6,500. Probably less if you doubled up on classes as well. They have a sister program as well. It's called the OMSA, where it's a master's in analytics. It's slightly more expensive, but still under $10,000, and a fantastic program itself. And then I dropped a link in there about the data science process. But yeah, thank you so much.
Jazakallah khair, Hasib. I appreciate it. And now we'll be moving on to Q&A. So if you have any questions, if you haven't already, please put them in the chat, and also include the speaker's name if you would like it directed to them specifically. We have a list here that I'm just going to give the names of panelists and ask them questions that we got from our Google Forms. So this one is for Hamza. Please take me through the whole process of how to get an internship and what are the steps to come out of college with a full-time software engineering role?
Okay, yeah, Jazakallah khair. That's a good question. It's kind of a long response, but I'll do my best to keep it as sweet and simple. Starting backwards, the best way to get a full-time job is to get an internship, right? Once you get an internship secured, you have some relevant experience, you did the hard part of securing your first job, and you just transitioned that into something full-time, hopefully with the same existing company. Now, getting an internship, that's extremely, it's something that everyone's kind of in the boat of, and there's limited spots, so everyone's fighting for those, those same roles. So a couple of things that can put you ahead of the rest of the pack. One I would say is if you're a freshman or even a sophomore, don't underestimate the foundational, like programming 1, programming 2, data structures and algorithms. A lot of times people are coming in like freshman year, like, how can I get an internship? How can I get an internship? And, they're falling behind on projects. They're not fully understanding lessons. They're not doing well on exams. Like, these are the foundational, classes that you need to excel and be really good at understanding, because even if you get interviews at these companies, you're going to be challenged and asked on your technical capabilities. So if you're not going to be able to answer some of these questions or have a hard time, then you're going to be kind of wasting your own time. So really get the foundations right and don't overlook that aspect. It's something that, I know I personally needed to hear even when I was interviewing, was like, I need to revise and revisit before I should just blindly go and apply when I'm not ready. So focus on that. Once you've kind of have an understanding of different data structures, how code, like being able to understand time complexity, runtime, space complexity of your code, you have these foundations down, then I alongside this process also, you should be building projects. So generally on your resume, ideally, you have your education, then you hopefully have some relevant experience. But if you're new, you won't be able to even have this section. So you try to use and put a few different projects on there that highlight your, your interest, your passions, and you mix in popular technologies or a relevant problem in the world that you want to make a change on or impact on, and you try to address it through a personal project. A lot of times you see students, they'll put like the basic projects that they did in programming 1 or programming 2, like, like an ATM converter or like a Sudoku solver or something like that. But I really recommend go outside the bubble, challenge yourself, find a project that you're passionate about, right? One project I was recommending to a lot of people to do during the pandemic was like, everyone wanted to invest on Robinhood and do this and do that. So there's like tons and tons of articles out there that show you how to make a step-by-step, like, mini machine learning predictive app that can help you determine what stocks to kind of invest in. Now, invest at your own risk, but this isn't going to help you make $1 million. It's kind of just a small project that you can show off and showcase to recruiters, that when you're talking to them, you get that wow aspect. Like, oh, okay, that's cool. Like, you saw a problem in, in the world or in the countries at the time, and you saw a passion and you decided to follow that and make a personal project based around that. So I think really highlighting that impact catches recruiters' eyes when they're scanning and going through these resumes. And also with projects, it's very easy to get in your own head and, never get the ball rolling because you don't know where to begin. Like, it's completely okay if you're following a step-by-step tutorial and you're building something from scratch with the tutorial. As long as you understand at the end of the day how you built it and what you did, even if, every single thing was kind of copied and pasted over, make sure you understand how to do it and maybe try to implement it again from scratch. Don't think that it has to be the next, Microsoft or Apple idea and has to start all by you and be completely original. Just something you're passionate about that's outside of your basic school curriculum, that can separate you from the rest of the pack. So now, assuming you have coding down, you have at least 2 to 3 good projects on your resume, this is where you leverage existing connections. I say this a lot, but alhamdulillah, our communities are, there's a lot of connections out there, whether that's at your local masjid, whether that's through YM, whether that's through people in your family. Leverage existing connections, talk to people in our community who are in tech, who have roles, and see if they can give you a referral, if they can kind of get you any extra leg or foot ahead from the other people. This goes a long way. And especially if it's your first job, getting that first one is the hardest one. So leverage any existing connections you have to make it easier for yourself. And the last thing is, make sure you're applying a lot, right? Islam teaches us that we should tie our camel first, right? So we can't just sit around, just go to class every day and expect that an internship is, we're just going to get an email one day like, congrats, here's your intern offer. You have to go out there, you have to put in the work. Sending over 200 applications is extremely normal and common. That's something basically me and all my friends, we kind of did. And it's not just in software engineering, it's any of these other fields that you ask any of the other people on the panel about. You have to send a lot of applications. What you see at Career Fair is just a drop in the ocean compared to all the roles and applications out there. So go out there, cold apply, get referrals, message recruiters on LinkedIn, message people who have jobs or any opening. And it's a tough market right now. I'm going to be honest, and there is a lot of shortage on or a lockdown on how many interns they're bringing in. But even if that's the case, even if you can get yourself in a parallel role, right, or something that you can kind of spin off as you automated a process or software engineering from some local business, go for that. Any bit of relevant experience is going to help you get future internships or, your full-time job. So yeah, I think with that, yeah, that's I'll summarize everything.
Jazakallah khair. That was very nice. Next question is for Omar. This one is a multi-part question, and Hamza, he did cover a little bit about this, but specifically for those freshmen and sophomores and going into college or in college now, I have a question here saying, can I land an internship with little or no projects or experience? If so, how do I go about it? And can I apply as a freshman and expect to see the results?
Sorry, I was talking to myself there. Yeah, that's a really good question, especially if you're an undergrad. You come in, there's really not much on your resume. You're not really sure what to do. You're kind of just in a phase where you're just, there's no really direction, right? A lot of these companies understand that. So there are companies that actually offer internships solely and specifically for undergraduate students. So if you are a freshman, if you are a sophomore in college, keep an eye on internships like that, right? For example, Google has their STEP program that is basically a software/product management internship where you that is dedicated and catered towards undergraduate students. So they only accept freshmen and sophomores. And for example, Microsoft also has the Explorer internship, which is also Suite plus product management, that is again catered towards freshmen and sophomores only. Those are the only two that come up to the top of my head. But if you guys do your research, you will be able to find opportunities like that. That doesn't necessarily mean that, you can't get a normal internship. That doesn't mean that you can't get a regular software engineering internship or a cloud internship, PM, data engineering, machine learning, AI, any of these internships, right? little or no project experience is fine. A lot of these companies, like I said, understand that, you know, you are an undergraduate student. You're not expected to be some mega genius that's coming out of high school with already project experience or with the best coding experience or technical expertise, anything like that. Like Hamza had mentioned, apply, apply, apply. The worst thing you can do is not, right? The worst thing you can do is not to do something and give up. I remember my sophomore year, I applied and I applied to 360 places my sophomore year. I got one singular offer maybe 8 months after applying. And it kind of just gave me that motivation. Once I got it, I was like, I mean, you just have to keep on doing it, right? Apply to wherever you find an internship, wherever you find availability for something, apply. And if you don't have any project experience on your resume, I mean, you know, take that initiative. There's a lot of project ideas that you can, you know, find online. My first project, I literally found, like, I searched up cool projects to put on my resume, literally word for word. And, you know, I just looked around and I was like, oh, this sounds pretty cool. And I just, you know, messed around with a couple of things, figured out a couple of, you know, platforms, solutions, things to work on. And, you know, just did it from there. So, you know, take that initiative. And if, you know, if you don't have project experience, you know, showcase your, if you have a regular job, you know, showcase that, be ready to talk about it. Even if it's, you know, something as simple as food, right? I used to work at Domino's. I had Domino's on my resume for a pretty long time because that's all I had. But I would, you know, change it in a sense where I was like, you know, like, I worked with people. I know how to be a people person. I know how to work under, you know, tough situations, high pressure, like different things like that. You know, it sounds weird, but, you know, you do learn a lot of these soft skills that a lot of these companies are looking for in these types of roles. So don't be afraid to talk about positions like that either. And like I said, certifications are also really great to add. You know, if your resume, you know, you feel like, you know, your resume is not the best, you, like Hamza mentioned, you know, there's a lot of us and there's a huge network of Muslims, and we're very blessed to have this a huge network of Muslim professionals that are willing and able to help. Don't be afraid to reach out to any of them. Don't be afraid to reach out to any of us here. Don't be afraid to reach out to, you know, someone older or someone, you know, that mashallah is doing really well in their field, and you're interested in, you know, following in their footsteps. And, you know, just it all ends up to, it all just, you know, summarizes to, you know, taking that initiative. And inshallah, whatever's in your plan, whatever's in the qadr of Allah will happen.
Jazakallah khair, Omar. Yeah, actually, from personal experience, I should give a little bit of background info on me. I'm a freshman student at Stevens Institute of Technology, and I am still very interested in getting an internship for this summer. And I decided, why not just start coding projects now that I have a little bit more under my belt. And so I started off with some simple Python projects, and I'm studying quantitative finance, which is a mix of computer science and finance. And one day we went over this one trading strategy in class, and I thought, why not try and program that? I did, and I tried trading on it, and I lost a bit of money. So be careful and do it at your own risk. But it's always good to learn, and always good, in my opinion, to take some initiative. Of course, always prioritize your classes over any side projects that you have, though. So next question is for Raheem. This is a more general question. It's about the question asked, what challenges do you face as a Muslim in the tech industry?
Yeah, so for the tech industry, I believe that it's actually a really good place to be if you're Muslim, because the tech industry is very diverse. At least all the companies that I've worked for, I've always worked with offshore teams in various countries, either in Asia or in Europe, or even in South Asia or South America, sorry. And because of that, a lot of people in this industry are just coming from all different backgrounds and are very understanding of different cultures. And as a Muslim, you know, having that understanding, and not only that understanding, but also having probably a remote work, because a lot of tech jobs are remote or remote friendly, and having a lot of flexibility in terms of your schedule and workday. It's a really good place for Muslims to be. And I believe that this industry is probably one of the least like the industry that faces the least challenges for Muslims. And one thing I will say is that if even if this industry does face challenges for Muslims, I mean, the only way that will change that is by actually working in the industry and showing, you know, our presence at our companies. So nowadays, there's a lot of companies that have different diversity initiatives or different human resource initiatives where they are looking for educating different people about different cultures and different backgrounds. So that's our place as Muslims, where we can tell our company, hey, can we send out a Eid Mubarak email to all the employees, or can we you know, get some meals in the cafeteria after hours for Muslims who are fasting. Those are definitely areas that we should strive to make pushes in and make a change in if we see the opportunity.
Thank you, Raheem. I have a question here for Hasib. The question says, I've seen so many data scientists go for grad school right after graduating from undergrad. How common is it, and is it pretty much expected for higher level data science roles?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't speak to how common it is because I don't have that data. But as I mentioned in my part of the talk, it's definitely going to help you get your foot in the door if you have some kind of specialty to apply your data science to. You need to think less about, I have these skills in data analytics and I have these skills in SQL, and think more about how can I apply these skills to a particular domain. So if you want to work in healthcare, I know how to do X and fill in the blank because of your skills in data science. So going to grad school right after your bachelor's or while you're working helps you specialize and then helps you get a better job. More employers will be willing to look at someone with some kind of specialty on their resume.
Thank you for that, Hasib. This one can kind of be answered by anyone, I believe. So if anyone wants to take it, go ahead. The question is, how important is the college ranking when pursuing a degree in these areas?
Ooh, I'll take this. No one cares. It's really, I don't think anyone has asked me what my GPA is, what school I've gone to. It's on the resume. I've never gotten a question for it. I don't think I've ever been filtered by it because NYIT, I don't believe, is in like top 10 for CS schools. Georgia Tech for the master's is definitely a top 10 school. And what's more important is the network you build while you're in college, because I actually got this job at Amgen through a referral through my master's program. So it's less about what college you go to and more about what network you build because of the college you're going to now. There's people everywhere, and there isn't just people who only go to certain colleges. You'll find people who go to all sorts of colleges. So no, it's not important what name it is, in my opinion.
Thank you for that. Does anyone else want to say anything on that? No? Okay. Next question is for Hamza. How much of your personal time do you dedicate to furthering your understanding of ideas or tools related to your work? In contrast, how much time do you dedicate to learning ideas or tools that are not directly related to your work? I've learned that the mindset of a software engineer is that of continuous learning, and I would appreciate your thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's definitely a balance, and it's totally going to depend on the workload you have at the time, the technologies you're working with at work. I think earlier, I mean, I'm still pretty early in my career, but just breaking into like when you're first starting in the industry, or even when you're on your first couple of internships, there was a level of breadth you're trying to build with trying to understand certain different technologies, and you might be thrown with like 3, 4 different technologies, like understanding like Docker, Kubernetes, like Terraform, Chef, some scripting, and like Linux and whatnot. And everything's kind of different because it's not a school setting anymore. It's not just you in an IDE and you're just writing code. There's frameworks and different things you have to build. So you're trying to build a little bit of breadth with understanding technologies in work. And then I think gradually, once you come into full time and you have a certain role and you're working on a certain piece within a service, you definitely have to get depth in different areas and build specialties. Just like Haseeb mentioned, having specialties in a field like data science, team members have specialties within their team on certain parts of the code base or the service or the application. So to do that, you're always learning as well. And I think there's definitely a continuous learning aspect. Is building depth is extremely challenging and hard because a lot of technology software engineers use are, they're built by other companies, and those tools and technologies have, maybe dozens of different teams continuously putting out new features and modifying and making changes to. So you're always reading, documentation and learning new ways to improve, complexity. So definitely on the job, you're going to be put through a lot in the beginning, though I still feel like there's a little bit more breadth you try to cover. And then as you get comfortable in a role, you spend more time building that depth. Now, in terms of just outside technologies, it totally is up to you. For me personally, I like to spend, maybe once every few weeks, a little bit of time hacking away on my side projects. There's probably at least like 7 or 8 side projects I've started and spent like a few days on and then just never visited back. And then there's like sometimes like there's 1 or 2 that, so I'll come back to here and there and learn how to integrate different pieces. Like when ChatGPT first came out, I think that night when I first got my hands on it, I just like hacked away and, tried to build like a visualization tool for it where it's like, okay, like, right now you can only prompt by giving questions to it, typing questions into it. But what if you could speak questions into it and, visually put in, like screenshots and snapshots of things. And it was cool because my undergrad research was in like voice processing systems and understanding how those models work. So it was kind of like old technology being fused together with this new technology to see how to make that come to life. So definitely I would say you're learning all the time, and it's kind of a non-stop process of that. So for anyone interested in that, this is the field for you.
Thank you for that, Hamza. Just quick follow-up question. Would you say that that's more of your, general curiosity in this field, or is that just something that you just picked up through work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit of both. Like, it's totally okay for people who just want to do their job. You log on, do your 9 to 5, and you call it a day, and you spend the rest of the time with your family. There's plenty of people, and even for me, I think I've been going through phases where, honestly, up until like 2 days ago, I think for the last 10 months, I've kind of just in that phase of like just 9 to 5, kind of log out. But recently, or literally just as of a couple of days ago, I've been picking up some more things, and it's kind of really dependent on you. So sometimes your curiosity picks up and your workload enables you to take on more things. And sometimes you're a little bogged down by some of the other things, you might be already busy with. So yeah, definitely a mix and match. It's not necessary for anyone in software engineering to have to always go out of your way and try to learn the newest, latest technology. It is totally dependent on you and what you're comfortable with. And even like, a certain standard you might want to set for yourself. It's not like we're working with like, like every new latest technology. There is a level of familiarity and consistency when you're talking about working in large enterprise companies, where, you're not always changing technologies every other week, that maybe some startups might be more prone to doing. So yeah, definitely your own curiosity, I think, that plays at it.
All right, Jazakallah khair for that. I have a specific question for Omar. in your career, how was the transition from software engineer to cloud architect in terms of difficulty?
Yeah, pretty good question. So when you're focused on software engineering, if it I think it really depends on the person and where their skill set is, where their level of expertise is, and where their interests lie, right? Your interest plays the biggest part in stuff like this. You take pre-med, for example, right? You take being a doctor. A lot of people, like, if you ask any kid that's in med school or any person that's in like rotations or anything like that, they say this is a very tough thing to do if you're not fully invested, 100% interested in doing this, right? And you really see yourself doing this long term. I think it kind of does. I think you kind of feel a similar mindset when it comes to software engineering, right? Because, I'm definitely not comparing the two, but when you think of software engineering, it is a tough field. You do want to be, like 100% invested in it. You want to be able to gauge every opportunity you have, learn whatever you can from whatever experiences. And when I was, doing my software engineering internships and stuff, I enjoyed the work. I don't mind coding and stuff, but it wasn't something I saw myself doing long term, right? I was like, I don't see myself, being a typical software engineer, right? And I could tell because a lot of my skills, I felt like I had a better skill set in something else. Now I didn't know what that was, and so that kind of got me, doing my own research. I was like, what can I do to, stay in tech, but also exceed in a lot of these other skills that I think I can bring to the table. And so I eventually found, the solution architect position. And I did my research on it. It was actually one of the links that I had in my slide, one of the five ways that make a successful solution architect. And reading through all of them, I was like, I really see myself doing this. And so I started applying for internships like that. So if you in terms of actual level of like how hard it was to transition, I would say it wasn't hard for me personally because deep down inside my expertise ended up catering best towards a cloud or solution architect position over a software engineering position. But like I said, it will really depend on your interest and where it lies, right? So if you feel like you're second guessing your major or your level of your position of expertise essentially, take that initiative again, like I said, right? And do some research into other positions that you think would be a best fit for you, and just apply to them, learn more about them, maybe even network with other people, ask them how their position is, what do they do. Like I found this one position on my team that sounded really cool. I reached out to the guy. I've never talked to this guy in my life. I have no idea who he is. I literally just searched his name up on Teams. I was like, hey, my name is Omer. I'm this on your team. I was just wondering if we could talk a little bit about your position, what it entails, what do you do on a day-to-day basis, things like that. So it's all about just gauging different opportunities that meet your interests. Hope that answered the question.
I think that did. Beautiful explanation. Jazakallah khair. We got two more questions left. First one is for Raheem. The question is, would software engineering in the beginning and then PM as you gain seniority be a good career path, given that you have domain knowledge from experience as a software engineer?
Yeah, so for this one, if you want to become a software engineer at the beginning, or even anything like a cloud developer or a data scientist, and then a PM later, I think it's definitely possible. You can do it. But my question for anyone who asked this would be like, why would you want to? And if the answer is that you want to explore different roles, like you want to get into software engineering, but maybe you want to also see how product management is, then great. In tech, you'll oftentimes see many great leaders in the industry. They come from a few different roles and experiences throughout their career. But if your goal is just to become a product manager, then becoming a software engineer at the beginning won't really give you an edge, rather than just becoming a product manager right away as well if you have that opportunity. So I would really optimize for what your end goal is. If your end goal is to just explore, then go for it. Jump every couple of years into different roles until you find the role that you love and is best for you. But if your goal is to become, the best software engineer or the best PM or the best data scientist, then I would say the best thing you can do is just start in any company that you can in that specific role, and then just keep moving either up the ladder or in more prestigious companies. And you can gain experience that way. That would be the best.
Okay, perfect. And final question, it's for Hasib. This one's the fun one. What are the specifications of different fields in CS, and what path should I take based on my interests? So I think this audience is more catered towards those just learning about the tech field.
I'm here. So I would start with what interests you, and this is kind of a part of my previous answer. Don't think of it as the tools, don't think of it as the specifications, don't think of it as the individual frameworks and all that. To bring in an analogy, when you're hiring a general contractor to do some work around your house, you don't go out and say, do you know how to hammer nails? Do you know how to use a wrench? Do you know how to use a buzzsaw? You don't ask those kinds of questions. You say, are you good at building X? Can you build a deck? Can you put up a fence? Can you fix my roof? The end result of all the different tools that that person has experience with gives them the specialty of what they do. And that same thing applies in anything in computer science. Literally any website you go to, any app that you use, they have some underlying technology, yes, and you can have fun talking about that all day with other tech people. But at the end of the day, you're building something to be used by customers, and you want to specialize in what you want to do. Where do you want your impact? Do you want to, build video streaming websites, or do you want to build video games? Do you want to go into healthcare? It all depends on your interest. So if you find yourself leaning towards something in particular, lean towards that, and then look at what the technologies underlying therein and learn about them some more.
Okay, thank you for that amazing analogy. That helped a lot. That's going to conclude our event today. Here's the next slide. So thank you again. If you would like to contact these panelists, their LinkedIns will be attached to the slideshow, and this will all be sent out to everybody. The slide deck feedback form will be shared in email afterwards to everyone who registered. And I believe, if I check on my calendar here, February 15th or the 22nd, we are hosting another event. That's on college applications for those in high school. And we will send out more information as the time comes. Jazakallah khair. I'm going to end off with Surah Al-Asr. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Akbar, and nice seeing you all.